Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London, and you can find me on all the social medias, Instagram and Ravelry as Skeindeer, and I have a little pattern shop called Skeindeer Knits, which is where you can get my knitting patterns, where I've designed things like colour work, Scandi things, and I've had a couple of weeks. This is where I sit and talk about knitting every now and then. I also spend every waking hour with this little gremlin here. Her name's Embla. She's 5 months old now. Can you believe it? She's so big and actually bites a lot less, but somehow feels like being naughty when Mama wants to record a podcast episode. And so yes, to return viewers, hello and welcome back. Embla, say welcome back. And to new viewers, let's get talking about knitting. That's what we do here. I have a lot of knitting to talk about, and this episode nearly did not even happen because this little gremlin here has just wanted to do pretty much everything else. But I think she finally got her way when her favorite best friend, Tia the Frenchie, her neighbor, came out and played with her for a long time. So you should be exhausted now. You should be exhausted. I really hope that you are, and you're going to find some chill so we can talk about all the knitting Mama's been doing despite your interferences. Yes, I actually have a finished object and I have 3 works in progress that I would love to share with you guys. I am a little bit out of it. May possibly be wearing yesterday's makeup, don't look too close. I've slept through this week. I know I talked about having that kind of experience back in the spring and I kind of thought that was over. And then I just broke out in hives this weekend and slept through the next 3 to 4 days. So, but I think I'm sort of back in business now. Had a lovely day out in South Bank yesterday. So that's, we hope we're back and I can actually carry a complete sentence. First, I have finished the Natsumi pullover. This is by Yokohata and was published under Brooklyn Tweed and had Brooklyn Tweed Loft as the recommended yarn, but I substituted with Navia Silky Wool, which is a silk wool blend that I can highly recommend. Despite being the meterage that suggests fingering weight, I'm gonna say this was leaning more towards sport weight and kind of a thick sport at that. So I've been really pleased with this yarn. I have made it in all black yarn because I don't particularly love the color palette for the Navia Silky Wool range. That's just my taste. You may find colors that you like there, but for me it was really only the black that seemed doable for my wardrobe. Now, huge disappointment for you all, I'm sure, but no surprise nonetheless, is that I have not blocked it yet. I have, however, woven in the ends, which I'm quite pleased. I talked about in the last episode just how I had messed up some of the dye lots, so I'd bought 2 extra skeins, cakes of yarns really, they're sold in wound up cakes. They were a different dye lot to the rest of it, and if I had just checked that before I cast on, I actually wouldn't have needed to use those 2 bowls cakes at all, because I had 2 left at the end. So what I ended up getting was a black jumper with slightly more black sleeves then. Oh well. And it's funny because when I was talking about this last time, I was like, it doesn't really show, yeah. And then it shows so well on camera, but really only on camera as far as I'm aware. I haven't really seen that it's been very visible elsewhere. So I'm gonna try to show you, and hopefully nobody's gonna try to nip at it, right? She's becoming quite good knitting dog. You are, you're great. Mama loves you. Yes, you're wonderful. So yeah, Natsumi is done, completely done. All the sleeves, it's already gathering a little bit of dust because I just hung it over a door just to get out of the way so that I could block it. But I think that led to a kind of out of sight, out of mind thing. So that's why I've not done that yet. And it's been raining so much in London lately that it's just been out of the question, because when I block my knitting, I basically just leave it in the tub soaking in a basin. Anyway, like a little thing, a container I put it in, fill it with water, and then I just fill up a massive pot for cooking with water up top of that, so it weighs it down and stays there. And then once that's soaked for at least half an hour, I will hang it sort of to drip in the shower, but it can't really hang there, it's not going to dry there. So once I feel like it's just enough water that's come out that I can actually carry it out to the backyard and have it hanging over my, my vocabulary is just gone. Where I dry my clothes outside, the wash line. The wash line. And that's just, that last part is not really feasible in the rain that we've been having, though today actually would have been a good day to do this, but then I would have been holding a very wet jumper, so perhaps not. But you can sort of get an idea for how it's looking. I'm very, very happy with it. I'm so glad I finally knitted it. It's been in my queue for a very, very long time. I've just specifically had this yarn marked for it for pretty much as long. And yeah, it's been a really fun knit because it is a sideways knit. You cast on provisionally kind of from the hem over the shoulder down to the other hem. And eventually you graft together that provisional casting up to the underarm. So you basically have those stitches for the sleeve. You knit across, you sort of do some increasing to slope the shoulders and then some decreasing and increasing again to shape the neckline in the front. It's not shaped in the back, so if I hold it like this you can see that it's only shaped in the front. And then you do kind of reverse the same thing to end up in the same point, and you can do another sleeve here. So yeah, the only big boohoo with this project was definitely the dye lot issue, which you really need a very high exposure setting on my camera, which happens automatically when I hold up something this black, to see that issue. And there's more little things on it, but yeah, so that's all me. And if I really cared, I could have frogged the sleeves and just done it in the other two balls I have left in the actual correct dye lot, but I don't care that much. It just does not show enough IRL for me to care. Right? Isn't that true? I get so many kisses on my nose tip. That's kind of where she's allowed to kiss me, because I know where that mouth's been. Yeah, she's so good now. I tried to say like the personal and the dog stuff like to the end of the episode. I know some of you guys love hearing about her, so much Strictly for knitting, but I just want to say hello. Sorry about that. I was just called by a knitting friend, so I totally forgot what I was saying. Wonderful. I was talking about Embla, my little superstar, who she gets very like, what about me, when the phone rings. So now she's being all gremlin-y again. Yeah, she gets very funny when the phone rings. Just kind of like, why are you not talking to me? You're talking to someone, I know it. But honestly, she's a really lovely dog. Like, I have to say it enough because she's always kind of being a bit naughty when I put the camera on for some reason. But she's a really sweet, kind, curious and friendly dog. Like, everyone loves her. She has a bigger social network than I do currently. She's got so many dog friends in the area, and all those dog owners knows her, and everyone loves her, and it's just really lovely. I had a day out, which I will get to in a little bit. I've been to some yarn shows, and so for one of those events, one of the dog owners that we met in the park babysat her, and they were so happy with it. They were more than happy to do that again. And then for the other yarn event, my good friend down the road and her boyfriend looked after her, and I swear, like, her boyfriend and Embla have just bonded in a way that neither of us can really fully fathom. So that's probably gonna happen again if they don't get their own dog at this point, because yeah, it's very cute. So she's had a great time. It's me who's struggling every time I go away and she's being looked after by anyone else. I'm just like looking at photos of her, talking about her to everyone who will listen and everyone who won't listen. It's just, you know, you're just such a good dog. She's actually had a haircut. I don't know if you can tell because she looks exactly as fur as she was before. Apparently a puppy haircut, which is what I agreed to, is just kind of trimming around the feet, the bits, and just kind of belly, just kind of clearing out where it matters, but apparently not the ears, so she still looks like a teddy bear, which is just really nice. Anyway, more knitting. I'm not sure if it was the cable motif on the Natsumi, but I've been really feeling cables lately, which I don't think I've ever really felt. I've done some cable knits. I even did a full-on cable jumper for a childhood long friendship, but really never done something like that for myself, and it's about time really. So I picked up an old project of mine, the Sole cardigan, and I was already thinking about picking it up before, but it really helped that the designer, Hero Paint, had updated the pattern. And I say updated, that's an understatement. Pretty much redone it. So it's been reworked completely and put up for sale on sites like Ravelry. And I just bought it there, even though I do already have the previous pattern from Lane magazine issue something something. I don't remember. It's one of the earlier issues. It's like definitely within the first 10. So I have managed to kind of segue my way from what I had cast on and knitted, mostly the yoke, to where I was at there and where I'm gonna be at in the new version of the pattern, so that I can just continue on with that one. That was a lot harder than I thought, not really because of the differences between the two. If you haven't finished a yoke yet, actually that's pretty straightforward. I think the first changes you will spot, unless that's just in my size, is the underarm cast on stitch count. So you can get from yoke to the rest of the body quite easily. So that got me quite into just, yeah, continuing on. But I had not made a single note as to where I had left off in the pattern, because I never do. I don't really tend to need that. I can often find out where I left off. People often put in very helpful stitch counts here and there in the pattern. But this was kind of one of those places in the middle where the stitch count that you have doesn't really make sense with where you end up. Sometimes you'll have slightly more than you have later, even if you're actually increasing, because there's a movement of stitch markers and stuff like that. Pretty straightforward once I actually did it, but before I'd done it I was like, I'm not sure if this is that size or that size, but I'm just gonna carry on and maybe regret that I'm knitting something that makes no sense right now. But we're gonna hope that this is just gonna end up in the spot that I think I'll end up at. And I did end up in that spot that I thought I was gonna end up at. So everything made sense. I am where I'm supposed to be in the pattern. I have just cast on for the underarms. And if you're wondering why I'm talking about more than I'm showing you, well, here she is. We're gonna try. And you're not gonna bite Mama's knitting, because you're a good dog. Regrettably, the balls of yarn attached to this project have fallen behind the dog crate next to the sofa, so we're just gonna hold this up like that and hope that there aren't too many temptations. Goodness me. So here it is in all its cable gorgeousness. And if it's looking like extra neat, it's actually because I've given it a soak and dry, because now that I've got this far and I'm looking at it, this is supposed to be a very big cardigan. Now I should have sized up more, I do know that, because I just didn't have the yarn amount required even for this size. Though I had a lot of yarn, it still does not seem like it's quite enough. So I'm probably gonna have to hold back on the length. I'm gonna probably have to hold back on the folded cuffs, and hope also that the yarn amount in the pattern is exaggerated. But we'll see what happens. So far I seem to have a lot of yarn left, so I'm kind of optimistic. But now I'm starting to think that the reason I have a lot of yarn left is because I might be massively off in gauge. I wonder if I'm knitting this way tighter than I'm supposed to. I did go up in needle size and I try to make that fit with the gauge that is given in cable and rib. And it's the cable gauge that was saying that I was on the looser side, so I figured I'd pretty much be safe with this needle size. But looking at it now, it's like, this is the width of the back, right? It's small. It will be, at best, a kind of fitted cardigan. And I'm just gonna have to be okay with that. It's not gonna be this big oversized thing that I have imagined. But since soaking it and drying it, I have tried it on because it's on such a massively long cable right now. And it is fitting. It's sitting, it's going where the yarn is kind of pulling right now. That's kind of inconvenient, but... And I've also put in these kind of yarns through here just to show how much I have knitted since I picked up the project. And it was quite encouraging to see. I have got through, I think, 11 centimeters. That's like more than 4 inches. Since I abandoned this project. So I am clearly knitting this way faster now than I did back then. Like, this part took me so long, whereas this part has been very quick. So I've kind of leveled up in my cable knitting game. But I'm feeling it is a little bit tight over the back to the extent that I can feel it. And I wonder if I knew that, I could have modified it also to increase more for the body, more gradually over the back, rather than just casting on a lot of stitches under the arms, because I think I could have benefited from having those stitches at the back yoke and the front yoke, I suppose, or earlier on. And I think that would have made more sense for this construction type, but oh well. I didn't do that, so I'm just sticking to the pattern. I feel like this pattern is kind of beyond my level because of its combination with saddle shoulder cables, and you know, I haven't made it yet. So, but yeah, I think it's gonna work out. I am cautiously optimistic. I think I'll have nice and roomy sleeves. That's one of the benefits, I think, from working from the new version. I think the sleeves are a little bit more spacious. So I think it'll be okay. And remember, I'm going to pick up a lot of stitches around the neckline as well. It's going to be a nice big rib that like folds over. It's going to be gorgeous. So I think it's okay. I'm just feeling the back is a little bit tight, so it's not going to have that big oversized fit that I imagined. But also part of that is actually because the model in Lane magazine is wearing a way bigger size than the amount of ease that's recommended in the pattern, which is quite common. It just happens, like someone will knit the sample for their own size and then they publish it in a magazine, and then the magazine is like, oh, we have a much smaller model. And I think these days magazines are probably a bit more specific about what size you should knit a sample for. I mean, I have just knit a item for Lane, which I can actually finally talk about. So that is actually something I completely forgot to put in my notes. It was great that I remember that. But before that, I guess I want to make sure I have said all I need to say about the sorted cardigan. So I'm gonna persevere. I did ask the designer if I could get the gauge in stockinette, which is not in the pattern, but there is a big chunk of stockinette in the yoke, so I could compare. But I also now wonder if, do I really want to know? Do I really want to know if I'm really, really off engaged, even though I might be? Scholars remain divided. I don't know. So that leads me to talking about, that means we can cuddle because I don't have the items here. Lucky you. As you guys know, I have said multiple times over the past, I think, year that I am knitting on this and this and this and this is a design thing and I can't talk about it yet. Well, I can now. So it's going to be actually 4 things that I can talk about, and somehow they seem a little bit parallel, but that is actually a complete coincidence. I have been published in a book and a magazine, so let's start talking about the book, because you already know about the book. This is a book project that I have been part of in Norway, where 10 designers came together, 5 from abroad, 5 from Norway. I'm not sure which one I'm in, but and we were gonna all be inspired by the Norlender factory in Western Norway, outside of Bergen, and we all kind of came up with our own ideas. So we were each going to make a garment pattern and an accessory pattern. They did not have to match or anything. They didn't have to be like hyper Norwegian or anything either. But of course, me being me, I did both. So I went pretty hardcore on the Norway front in the design because, yeah, and I kind of let myself, whilst being inspired by the items I found there, go with something. I felt a little indulgent. Like, it's a color scheme that I actually haven't done yet, I think, and I always wanted to, which is just like, just 2 shades of grey and red as an accent. And so I'll just put in a little picture here. This is Freiya, and it comes with a matching hat pattern. And the hat pattern can be made, I think, short and slouchy. This is like the weird parallel. And it's made in Hillesvåg Ask because we got to go to the Hillesvåg mill, and I and ahhed over all the yarn I could possibly choose from there. And in the end, I went with trusted old Ask because it's just one of my favorites. It just never lets me down. It will always lead to really, really good results and cardigans that last. So that is finally out and available in this book. I would have loved to be able to show you the book, but it is currently at Sylvia's place, slightly outside of London. So we're gonna meet up so I can get my mitts on the book and I will show you guys. That's Sylvia with cherries on top too, if you know her from Instagram. Good designer friend of mine, so hello Sylvia. She does lots of cool designs that kind of West African inspired. And she's got 2 designs in this book as well. So that is one thing that is currently out there in the world. I don't know what I can really say about the cardigan or the hat. They are kind of what you would expect from me, I guess. It's a drop shoulder cardigan and it's made with quite a lot of ease. Obviously, if you just want to have less, you can do that, but I wanted to make it a big cozy knit, which is kind of all that I'm wearing lately. If you find me outside, you will find me wearing either the Sarbu coat or the Kusakofta cardigan. Definitely finding my love for the Kusakofta cardigan lately because it's so nice and thick. So I'm really feeling like knitting something along those lines again soon because it's held up so well that the peg yarn at that tight gauge, it looks brand new still. After 2018, I wore it a lot and I still haven't put buttons on it, but yeah. So that's definitely I'm feeling that vibe a lot. So you can definitely see that in the Freiya cardigan, that I've been sort of feeling doing more of these kind of historical inspired Norwegian colorwork garment knits. Yeah, that's what I can say about this book. I'm gonna try to remember to put links and stuff about that in the description, but if not, you can look up Strikkekraft on Instagram and you can find all like purchasing information on there. The book is currently only available in Norwegian. I don't see that as a reason not to get it because it can easily be translated, but we are hoping for a translated book. Hopefully. I have no news about that as of yet, but I'll let you know if I hear anything. And that's one of the new patterns, two of the new patterns out there. But then also, sort of around the same time, Lane magazine have had me design a garment as well as a hat. Well, they contacted me and asked me if I wanted an accessory for their next issue. That was going to be a special issue on kind of Nordic knitting. So it's called Nordic Knits, I believe, and it doesn't have to be like specifically Nordic, but they want to use Nordic yarns and Nordic inspired designers. And I was like, yeah, I could do an accessory, but can I do a garment? And they were like, well, would you like to do both? And I'm like, hell yeah. So I managed somehow to talk my way into doing both, and it somehow ended up being a garment and a hat that matches, with the hat being slouch or regular. And that is a complete coincidence, and especially also that I'm using Ask, which was funny. But a lot of these things are actually left up to them to choose. So I was like, well, which kind of accessory would you like me to make? And they were like, oh, could you do a hat? We need hats. And that's the same thing with the book. Like, they were like, oh, we could use more hats in here. Would you want to do a hat? I'm like, I can do a hat. And then I had done the garment designs. I actually, fun fact, I designed this pullover and eventually the matching hats when I was staying at a friend's, a knitting friend's place in January between the moving. Do you guys remember that if you've seen the moving vlog? That's when I was sat in their sofa with my laptop and a chart reference book or two and just trying to come up with a design. And I'd come up, I kind of like chart my sketches in Excel, and they, in a sort of like flat lay, you can see sort of how that looks like a jumper. And I made lots of different color versions, and I asked my friend there, like, which ones does she like, because obviously she's a knitter. And I also sent in the best kind of versions then to Lane and asked which color versions they liked, and they picked the red one, the red and white one, kind of red and off-white. And so, and then I said, well, I think this one would be best to make in these yarns and these yarns and these yarns, so which ones would you prefer that I worked with? And they were like, oh, it'd be really cool if you want to work with Ask. I was like, great, love Ask. So that's how that happened. It's so much fun when you get to work with people like that. Sometimes this job can be quite isolating and you only get to meet people when you go to shows. So I kind of like this process as well of like throwing a lot of the ideas that I have. And I so much prefer that to working on a proposal. This was already like, I've already been accepted, so now I can just like throw out all my ideas, and it's a little bit more dynamic than me just having to like bet on my best horse kind of thing, you know? So yeah, I had a lot of fun in this whole process, and is nothing like getting sent a bundle of Hillesvåg yarn in the post to knit with. That I will never get tired of. So I got a lot of Ask in the mail, and I just had to just push through and knit all these things. I think I was knitting on the samples for the book in the lead up to my move from where I lived before. So I remember sitting there with these samples in my lap, like just freezing in this flat that I was now alone in, and trying to find ways to make all this work while packing down everything. And then as soon as I moved in here, I was like, right, we got a cost on this jumper and this hat for Lane now, and somehow managed to get it all done. And yeah, it was just really nice to have something like that to focus on, and I'm really pleased with the results. So, and I mean, I can never be mad when Lane photographs my knits like that. Oof, you know, it's just really satisfying. So I am very pleased that I can finally tell you about that. And the magazine should definitely be very easy to get hold of. You just get it from either your local yarn shop if they sell anything Lane, or Lane's shop online, they will have it. And once I have my mitts on it, I will definitely show you. Yeah, that's that. Hopefully also in not too long, I can actually show you the actual samples once I get them back. But for now, we're gonna have to deal with the photos. And so that leads me on to my works in progress beyond the soda cardigan that I just talked about. And yeah, like I said, I've been feeling cables lately. Don't know what's up with that, but I'm just going with it. And that's another work in progress that barely counts as a work in progress because I had done like a sleeve up to about here and not touched it. No, it was maybe past the elbow, I don't know. But then I just left it there, and that's all I've done for years. And this is kind of one of my aspirational knits, if you will. And that's a stag head pullover by Nora Gone. I have been wanting to do that since I saw it. Definitely got that feeling of like, oh, that's a lot of cables for little me. But I also am not a believer in people saying things like, oh, I could never knit that, because like you can probably do it, you know. Question is if I feel like doing that undertaking, but I do. And I saw that and I just thought that would be amazing in burgundy yarn. Shockingly, I know. Because I just thought this design, me being a Skeindeer, it being a stag head, and my love of burgundy, is like I can make this the most me jumper ever. So that's kind of what I've been aiming for. And so I got the Rare Natura Gilead yarn for this. I've done both sleeves, finally. I have finished both of them. Gosh, it's getting dark now. It's getting dark really early these days. Not sure how I feel about that. So they are flat. I am actually following the pattern and doing it flat. I wouldn't mind modifying the pattern and just doing it in the round, but I have yet to make a seam garment, and this time I will. I'll do it. I will. I won't just put it aside once I have done everything flat. I got through the sleeves. They were relatively quick to do. I mean, I also really liked that I could just do the cables flat, because you know, in a short circumference, that is a little bit more finicky to do. So yeah, kind of happy with that. And the lighting now is just abysmal in here because the sun's turned a corner, because it was just in my face today. It was just not good for recording, so we're just dealing with kind of poor indoor light. But trust me when I say this is the best shade of burgundy that ever burgundied. The Rare Natura really nailed burgundy with this one. It is gorgeous. It is top tier. No notes, just yeah. So look, these are looking tiny because they're curling in, because they are worked flat, but just trust me on that. They are nice and roomy, and I don't even think I modified a thing on them. I had some disagreements about whether I don't like the first row knitted is supposed to be a right side row. In my mind, if you work flat, the first row is a wrong side row, always and forever. It could be because it recommends a specific cast on method that I didn't use, so instead I have done two different things on these two sleeves. One I started with the right side row and the other on the wrong side row, so one has a row more than the other. And we're just gonna ignore that. Doesn't matter. Now, for the great reveal. We have a stag head, just about. It is emerging and it's looking a little bit scary right now. I never noticed that. And I'm really enjoying it, and I've just been like pulling through and pushing through. And as you can see here, I have bound off for the underarms even. Some stitches here, not on the needles anymore. Problem. Oh, that is short. That is very short. That's gonna be the underarm, and that is like barely down to my waist. It is probably just about. It is measuring 20 centi. I really cannot talk today. It's measuring 27 centimeters from the underarm down to the hem. For me, the minimum I would ever do is 28 centimeters. I have gone as short as 25 on like a very cropped yoke, but I wasn't really planning on making this cropped. What I had planned was just to take out some of the length so it wouldn't be as long as the pattern, because the pattern is very long and that's not really for me. I am a skirt and dresses kind of gal, so that didn't really make a lot of sense for the silhouette that I wear. But I had calculated this so meticulously. I put in everything in Excel, and like it was a whole ordeal. Measure the row gauge from the sleeves, and I guess that must have been where I made a mistake, because the row gauge I am getting is making it a lot shorter, and I am missing like, I'm gonna say 2 to 3 inches. I'm gonna say just over 2 inches. I would have preferred another 6 centimeters of length here, and maybe those 6 centimeters don't really matter much in the end. I don't really know, but there is a bit of shaping on the side here. It starts off a lot wider and it narrows in. It's kind of like a gentle little A-line that I really liked that was in the pattern. So I was definitely keeping that. But that means that I can't just frog down the stag head just a little bit and carry on the length and then keep knitting the stag head. No, I got to frog all the way down to before the shaping, which is like already down here. And I have already done that once, because when I had first knitted this, I was almost all the way up to the stag head where that starts, right here, before I realized I hadn't changed both my needle tips after doing the rib. I changed one of them. One I used the 5mm, another I used a 4.5, which is a considerable difference. It was looking really weird and uneven in the rows, and I realized that I couldn't keep that, so I had to frog back and do it all over again. But it's been a pretty quick knit. I've been getting through a lot of Only Murders in the Building, which thank you so much whoever recommended me that. I really enjoyed that, and there's an ongoing season 4. It's very exciting. Just really nice show. It doesn't sound like it by the name, but just trust me on that. And now all I want is a massive Upper West Side Manhattan apartment, please and thank you. But no murders though. So yeah, I am not sure what to do with this project right now. I have cast on for the back because I figured I could just knit the back. So it doesn't really look like it. It is here. It's just like a bit of ball yarn in the middle. I've started the back. Probably got it up to here, and so this is the point where I need to decide, am I going to make it longer and then shape later, or should I start the shaping right now and make it the same length? So I really only have two options here. Either we keep this length and accept that it's cropped, which will fit my style and it won't be a huge problem, or I gotta figure out a way to make it 6 centimeters longer. And the most sensible way of doing that, unless I want to knit this whole thing again, which I do not, is to snip off and knit more and graft it on in cable. And it has to be done like right here, so it's going to look like kind of middle of the belly probably. So if I mess up, we will see that will be quite visible. So what do? And I haven't decided. I am literally flip-flopping between the two options all the time. Like, this length isn't bad. It's 1 centimeter shorter than what I would prefer. But that is also a length that I tend to opt for yokes and raglans. I find that with set-in sleeves and drop shoulders, and this is sort of somewhere in between of that, I tend to prefer more length, not less. And we are 1 centimeter less, which isn't a huge difference. I'm not going to get hung up on that 1 centimeter. But 6 centimeters is more. That, I don't know what to do yet. So this has been resting for a few weeks now, actually. I've just kind of let it simmer, let it think about its choices and what we're gonna do. But that's on me. This is just because I have clearly just off in row gauge, which is a thing that happens to me a lot, and I think it happens to me a lot because of my strong preference for loftier yarns. And I had the same thing when I was recently making a design in the Rare Natura's Hillesvåg yarn as well, that the row gauge there was very different than what I had kind of guesstimated based on what I normally get in row gauge for that stitch gauge. So that's probably what's happened here, that this yarn just behaves very differently than the recommended yarn. So row gauge matters, really annoying because there's very little you can do about it. So yeah, stag head full over. I adore the pattern. I think is one of the most beautiful designs out there. Nora Gone is brilliant, and I've seen so many lovely projects on Instagram and Ravelry, so do check it out if you haven't already. It is stunning. It's gonna, so beyond what I've knitted now, it's gonna have these antlers kind of over the, kind of spreading over towards the shoulders, and it will have like a nice neckline shaping and just be kind of a very classic shape. I just gotta really sit with whether I want it to be very cropped or not, and it's not a bad decision to make it cropped. It was just not what I had in mind. So that leads me to my final work in progress that I haven't sat working on a lot today, and I spoke about it quite at length last time even though I hadn't cast it on yet, and that is the Clint shawl by Natasha Hornby. I came across this on Instagram. Someone had knitted it and I was like, oh my days, I want it, and I want it now because it looks like a tapestry but it's knitted. So it's kind of like in that style of like a lot of the decorations I have in my flat, like this cushion and other things. And so I decided to pull colors from one of my tapestries, and I remember that a friend of mine who lives not too far from Hillesvåg offered to, just anytime I might need it, just let her know she can drive up to the mill and get me the yarn that I need. And this yarn you can normally get at Knit with Attitude here in London. They just happen to not have it in stock yet. So I told my friend and she was like, oh, I'm already on my way to the mill. So this is what I requested, and what's left of it rather. This color scheme is amazing. I just think this is so pretty. I have another skein of these, don't worry. This is Sølje by Hillesvåg. It's their fingering weight pelt wool yarn. They have fingering weight, DK, Aran worsted and bulky in this yarn. So take your pick. But this is what I went with, and I just love these colors. They are a little bit off my usual. It's very like jewel colors that I very often go for, but a little bit different still. Like the brown and the green is a bit different. I like it. I'm gonna need a drum roll for this. Are you ready for a drum roll, Embla? She's sleeping on my foot right now. It's so cute. Look at this. Oh my days, it looks so cool. It looks so cool. Look at this. I don't think the intention with the design or anything is for it to look very Scandi, but to me it looks so freaking Scandi because this motif type thing appears in a lot of things across both Europe, Middle East and North Africa pretty much. So ta-da! I am so pleased with this, and this has been so much fun. Looking at it now, I'm just thinking about how much Prison Break I was watching while knitting it, but you know, that's how knitting works. You just kind of link it to, maybe that's just me. But yeah, it's really fun to do. So I said last time mistakenly that is like kind of mitre square construction. It's not. You kind of make it from a corner, increase to the stitch count that a square is, and then you decrease that either in the same color or in a different color depending on whether you're making a square or a triangle. So you start off doing that in a triangle down here, and then you start adding 2 pieces across here, then you start adding pieces up here, then you start adding the next row, next column, and then you finish the middle, do another one here, and then you just end up in the other opposite corner here. Really, really, really clever. At the same time, very happy I did not have to write this pattern because there are so many details to get right from a writing perspective that makes it such smooth sailing from a knitting perspective that I can only applaud it, to be honest. It's made very systematic so that it doesn't have to write anything more than once. So we'll have method A for one type of square, method B for another type of square, and all the way up to method G, I think, where one of those. So depending on, you know, whether you're attaching to a different side or whether you're just making it freeform and then it will be attached to a different square later. If you've done it, you know what I mean. And then later you pick up stitches to do the top bit, and then there's like a sort of shaped bottom bit also in grey. And I have now done one of the wings. I just finished the wing just now. Which, it even has colour work in garter. Looking at this now, I'm just thinking about the Hobbit films that I've just rewatched in extended edition. I'm not crazy about the Hobbit films, like they're nice, but they kind of failed at recreating some of that down-to-earth yet epicness of Lord of the Rings. So I'm going to be having a little Lord of the Rings marathon for myself this weekend. Extended edition, of course. Because it's autumn and it just feels right. I don't know what it is about that, but yeah, so that's, I guess, how I'm going to get through the other wing, though it's been a very quick knit and just, yeah, simple stripes, very like always something coming up next. You never get too bored with anything. And oh, I am so pleased with the colors. Like I said, I know they're a little bit off the usual for me, but I can't have every shawl in the same color. And in fact, it's been a bit of an issue for me that not all the shawls I have fit with all the garments I like to wear, and so hopefully this is going to supplement that somehow. But you can already get a sense of the wingspan here. I can bring this around here, and once I like kind of tighten it a bit, like that's quite nice, but this will also be blocked out, so it will stretch out and probably be more like this. So, well, the right side out, please. So yeah, shout out to the Clean Shawl and Natasha Hornby for these. Honestly, this is, I just gotta hold it up. Like, I hope this is inspiring a bunch of you to knit this, because I Would love to see lots of different versions. I mean, there are already lots of different versions of this, but I'm just kind of, I kind of need this to be a hype. It's just this so cool and so different and so cleverly written and so on and so on. One bit of advice I can give if you are gonna knit this is when you are gonna do which is most of these, after the first row and column, you're basically gonna be doing your squares by starting the first triangle at least by knitting into sides of the existing squares that you have done. So you're not picking up stitches all the way along, you're kind of picking up one for every other row. Right? Count out those loops before you know which one to start with for that square. Again, if you're doing this pattern, you kind of know what I mean. So you know that when you have finished, so let's say that there are, it's usually like between 10 or 11 times that you're going to be doing these like reverse pickups. Make sure, counting to 10 or 11, that that last stitch is where you want to make it the last stitch by making sure you're starting, you know, right before the sets of 10 to 11. Oops, this will make sense. You'll find out very quickly. That I found helped me so much because there were so many times that I would end up like, oh, I wish I had one more row that I was going to do so I could like really get this to end up in the right corner, and now I'm just one row shorter. And then if I just started slightly higher up and just shut that hole later, it would have ended up, it would have looked better. I just found that very useful and I learned that very quickly. So I've actually done this whole bottom row and I think also the top column twice. I did one and then I looked and I was like, I'm not happy with this. I don't know why. I just feel like if I did it again, it would be just a little bit better. So I did that. Mostly I just end up knitting some of these new squares from the existing squares that I had done, so I didn't have to waste any yarn. So that ended up taking a lot longer. I think I spent a whole week just doing this center motif. But that made me kind of use some of the experiences I had from the first bit. And especially my tensioning needed to settle a little bit, I think, because the first little triangle I had there and the first little triangle of red here, they were so much smaller than they ended up being further along. So very, very glad that I did that. So yeah, I'm just itching to start on the next wing now, and then I can finally get on the border and then it's done. Well, there's a lot of ends. There's a lot of ends here, but look, it looks pretty good from the back as well. But yeah, I got a lot of ends to get through there. And that sends us off to acquisitions. And we have already, of course, covered some acquisitions because of the Sølje yarn from Hillesvåg. That was a big bunch of that. Another part of my acquisition is this basket. I don't know why I feel like mentioning that, just because I'm currently containing my new acquisitions in this. So let's talk about what I have been up to. I mentioned some yarn events at the beginning of this episode, and it is autumn, so of course that means Yarndale and also the autumn edition of Unravel. So I'm going to just speak briefly about these two and what I got up to and all of that stuff. So Unravel, I went down there with some friends from a local knitting group in London, and I don't want to be so you guys know I love Unravel, absolutely adore it. I go every February and I have since I think 2017 or 2018. I don't quite remember when I started going, but it's been a big favorite of mine, and it's probably the most local one that I attend, even though it's not quite within London, it's just about. And then they decided to start a autumn version, usually in September, shortly after lockdown. And the first round was definitely quite affected by lockdown. You know, it was very clear that not a lot of people were visiting. And then I know last year I didn't go because it was so hot and trains were not running. It was like a strike, it was a whole thing. So this year, it felt like half the vendors were missing, like especially a lot of the regular ones that come every February, they just weren't there. So it felt very empty. And I think that can be a huge positive for a lot of people if you love, you know, getting to see just a few select vendors and not be overwhelmed by massive crowds and a huge push of people. That, you know, and it was a huge opportunity to get to notice vendors that I hadn't taken as much time with before, just because, you know, there are so many, right? So that's a positive for that. But for me, who's used to the February version, it felt just weirdly empty and was not what I expected. And that's on me because I could have just read the program before I went off. But I just want to say, for anyone who expected more, just like I did, don't discount it because of the September version. I think it could use some more promotion, because the February one kind of promotes itself. It's been around for so long, it doesn't really need, you know, rumor precedes it and all that stuff. But the February one is so much bigger. It is the same venue, it's the same event at the end of the day, but it's just so much bigger. And this was just quite small by comparison. I think if they wanted to aim for a small version, I would just close off a lot of the rooms and just kind of keep it a little bit tighter, because I felt like I was just walking through empty corridors and empty rooms, and just kind of like almost hearing echo where there was supposed to be lots of vendors and people, and that was kind of strange, because I have so much love for Unravel. I really want to see it succeed and thrive and be great and amazing, and it is. But the September one, I wonder if it can continue this way or not, and I don't want people to shy away from it. If September was your first one, please go again in February, because February is the bomb. It's so good. So that was Unravel. I didn't really end up with much, if anything, from that, unfortunately. But I had a good time. So, but yeah, the group I went with, they left halfway in the middle of the day, and I feel like that's saying something. I want this to succeed, and I wish it was a little bit later in the autumn, but I also understand that there's just so many Christmas events that it can't really compete with then. So, because that venue is used for a lot of different things for Christmas. So that was that. So I kind of had to make a little bit up for that just by going to my annual trip to Yarndale in North Yorkshire. That's quite far away from London, and yet every year, except one, I go on one day. So I leave early in the morning and I come back in the evening, and it works just about, because it takes about 2 hours from King's Cross, and then there's another hour from Leeds to Skipton. So it's like a 3-hour journey in total. And then you probably have to count an hour traveling within London to get to King's Cross. But for me, it's always worthwhile. I left 8 in the morning. I got there about 12. There were some delays around buses and whatever. So unfortunately, I got there a lot later than I planned. But I got to see everything more than once, and that's all I can ask for. I got to see a bunch of you guys. So that was really, really nice. And yeah, I just had an all-around really good time. It was a lot briefer than normally, just because I arrived later than I usually do. But yeah, thumbs up, really, really good. And I did end up with some purchases. Among other things, this basket. There was one vendor there, totally forgot the name, but they were selling a lot of kind of vintage type knitting things, like very old yarn winders and swifts, stuff like that. But they also had a few wicker baskets. And I'm like, yeah, I want a basket actually. So that was one of the things that I ended up with. This was what I was hoping to buy from Pearlessence at Unravel, but they weren't there. But they were at Yarndale. So I filled up my ChiaoGoo needle stash, because I have noticed I need more of these particular sizes. I wrote a list over the course of the summer and knew that next time I see Pearlessence, I'm going to get myself some more ChiaoGoos, because I think they have the best selection, they have the best prices, and they're really, really nice. So, and I got the latest Kate Davies publication, because I hoard all of her publications. I have all of them on my shelf there. This is going to go in there soon. I'm not going to pretend that I know how to pronounce this, but this is the latest. And I guess the only thing I can say about it is, like, they are all very, very different publications. They will have different ratios of whatever content they have versus knitting patterns. And this is one of those that probably is a little bit lighter on the knitting patterns. Like, so the patterns start here, and this is a bunch of other things, a lot of photography and writing about this particular area in Scotland and stuff like that. So if you want one of the publications a little bit heavier on the pattern side, I wouldn't start with this, but this is definitely one for those of us who just love Kate Davies' style and designs. And I am itching to do this particular cardigan on here. I don't know the right yarn for it. And now thinking about yarn that I didn't buy in Yarndale, that would have been perfect, but oh well. Oh, and there's also a really, really, really lovely yoke. So there. I kind of discovered Kate Davies' patterns through her yoke designs so many years ago, like we're talking probably over a decade. She'd done the owl yoke, which I have done twice, and then she came out with the yoke pattern collection called Yokes, which I think I must have done a number of them at this point. I don't remember. I was gonna knit all of them at one point. I'm sure they're all in my queue, but yeah, so that was a very good purchase that I got there from Pearlessence, and I did end up with some yarn. I got some from Lammermuir, which I've talked about before, but that was for my friend who was babysitting Embla. But I also got some yarn for me. I wasn't going to, but then I did. I don't know, I've talked a lot about lately how I feel about stashing, and it just feels a little bit like my sheer amount of sweater quantities are overwhelming me more than I'm happy about having them. Like I'm kind of like, oh, I really want to get through them. I want to have less of them and I want to have plans for them. And especially the fingering weight amount that I have. That being said, I did buy a sweater quantity of fingering weight yarn. I also forgot about this. I bought some more West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply sock yarn. I take Embla to the park a lot and sometimes I get a bit bored there, so I want to have some knitting just that I can do while she's running around with the other puppies. So there's that. But the sweater quantity I got was from John Arbon. It's been a while since we talked about John Arbon on here, so it is time that I talk about this. So yeah, I hope you can get a good idea of how lovely this color is. My battery is blinking right now, so I gotta talk really quickly. Hey Embla. I was actually asked by John Arbon back when they were planning on releasing this yarn, Yarnadelic. There's a sport weight version. If I wanted to design with this yarn, and I was like, hell yeah, send me a sample. And they sent me a sample of the color I liked the most, which was this one. And I was like, yeah. Unfortunately, I need to have the yarn at hand until the muse strikes to start designing with something. And I obviously only had that sample, so it just hasn't happened. And I just figured, you know what, if I want to design with yarn, I'm just going to buy it. I know like the proper business thing to do is, you know, sending a design proposal and you get the yarn amount and then you have a collaboration. That's like a whole thing. Clearly, the way I work, it's just easier to just buy the yarn and have it in stash, feel less guilty, and design with it when the muse strikes. So I'm gonna do that. I have something in mind that I think would be really, really cool for this. I might even design a cardigan to be knit flat. I know, we love all the sticks that I put in my designs, but they're not all necessary. A lot of them are about my need to not purl, so I don't know, that's not entirely true. There are other advantages to stick. For instance, often when we work flat, we tension knits and purls a little bit differently, which you often can, you know, compensate with by having different needle sizes for each. But I don't really have that issue so much as my tensioning differences mean that I pull the yarn slightly different. So when I end up at the end of a knit row, I have pulled the stitches more to be looser on that end than I do when I pull the stitches when I purl. So the row that I finish on a purl row isn't as loose, it's usually a bit tighter, because that's where also where I knit and then pull the next row. You know what I mean? So it ends up being very loose on one side and tight on the other. And I know that's not just me, a lot of people have that issue, but if you work in the round with a stick, you do not have that issue. So there are other advantages to sticking besides not enjoying purling as such. So just thought I'd mention that. So yeah, I got 4 of these. I think there was a 5th one on display in that dialogue, but this was really the last few. So yeah, I think that'll be enough. If I need a 5th one, I'll have to work something out, but I'm gonna assume that is enough. So I got through everything. Hurrah! That means we can go on a walk, Embla. Don't worry, I usually say it in Norwegian, so she doesn't know what a walk is yet. Do you want to say hi to people before we say goodbye? Embla! Oh, baby. Do you want to say goodbye to all the people? Show people how big you are. You're so big. Oh yes, I get kisses. Embla, ska vi gå på tur? Ska vi gå på tur? Ska vi gå ut? Ska vi gå ut? Ska vi gå ut? Yes, can we go for tea? She says yes, we are going to go on a walk. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm sure I forgot to mention a whole lot of things. I said, oh, we'll definitely mention that in the episode. But Embla, vær snill. Vær snill. Hey! But without further ado, hey, you there? But without further ado, we're going to say bye-bye. Bye-bye, Embla. We're gonna go out. We're gonna go out. Oh, that looked uncomfortable. Anyway, bye-bye.